Great. Okay, so in this session we'll be asking our panelists to unpick their broader trends in their fields. This is where we'll be discussing diversity in data science and AI and experiences on their career journeys so far. So our panel host hasn't been introduced this afternoon, so this is Laura Gemmell. She's the founder of Taught by Humans, which provides training to businesses, organisations and individuals in AI and data. Laura did a PhD in AI education for the public, and she's been working on building tech products for 10 years. So she delivered the training course this morning. I hope some of you managed to get into that. It was full, and it was excellent. And yeah, she's also a lead of the Southwest Women in AI and Data Network, which is aiming to build an inclusive community around connection, community, and AI. So definitely get in touch with her if you want to be involved in that. So yeah, we're very fortunate to have you here today. Thank you very much, Laura. So some practicalities. We are back on the Slido. There's 45 minutes for the panel discussion, then 15 minutes for the questions afterwards. And yeah, the link's right here, so get on with that. And take it away, Laura. Thanks very much.
Thank you. Ooh, is that really loud? It feels really loud in my head. Sorry. It's okay. Yeah, so thank you for your wonderful talk. So I am one of these weird people that really enjoys hosting panels, and not because I like talking, actually because I got to spend last week researching the four of you. So that was really fun. You've all done some really cool stuff, which I've written down, so if it doesn't come up naturally, I do have some questions specifically prepared for you. Nice ones, obviously. Yeah, so you've all kind of spoke about your careers to date, but one of the things I wanted to know, as we've got lots of people in the audience who might be interested in moving into data science or already working in data science, is, was there any pivotal moments along the way that got you to doing what you're doing today? And Penny, as you went last and told us a bit about your career, I'm going to start with you.
Thank you. Yeah. Is that okay on the mic? Can we hear okay? Yeah.
Oh, God.
Ooh. Let's move over a little bit. I feel like it's me. I'm causing trouble today. Pivotal points in my career.
That would have been a pivotal point.
A pivotal point in the session today. So I think for me, it's this idea of making a decision and getting over the hurdle to change. So let me elaborate a little bit on that. When I sort of was at Cardiff University, I'd been there for sort of 10 years. I was comfortable. I liked my job. I enjoyed all of the people. I was cozy. You know, I didn't sort of see any reason why I would ever leave. This is going to be my career. And then I got to a point where I realized that actually, to be able to go and grow and to do more and to be able to keep learning, you know, and to progress, I needed to move and I needed to do something different. And taking that first leap of faith and coming out of my comfort zone, you know, and leaving an organisation that I've known pretty much my entire career until that point, you know, even as a student, was really scary. But for the first time then, I was able to sort of go out on my own and be like, okay, let's try this. Let's see if this works out. And I've continued to try and take those leaps of faith in that, you know, thinking that any new opportunity is always an opportunity to learn something new and to do something different and to grow, whether it be for now, forever, or whether it just be the right, you know, not work out. That's all okay, you know, and it's all part of that journey. So, yeah, I think for me, the sort of pivotal point was to kind of be like, okay, Pen, come on, you need to sort of, you know, get out of your comfort zone. You need to go and do something different. You need to explore new things because, you know, you've got to a point here where you've kind of done everything that you can do, recognise that and move on. So, yeah, I don't know if that helps.
That sounds great, yeah. Get out of your comfort zone, take the opportunities that come to you. So, Bea, you mentioned starting to learn to code at 9, which is like super impressive. But after the age of 9, was there any pivotal career moments for you?
Nothing. I peaked at 9, I think. You do have to notice that English is my second language, so it did include a lot of learning English when I learned how to code. So as a typical answer, I will say I have 2 answers for that, which is the most annoying thing, so apologies. But there are 2 moments. One of them is, I already mentioned why I started coding, but I didn't mention why I cared about brains, and it was actually my dad's mom getting diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And it really blew my mind. There was absolutely no solution, no treatment, nothing by then. This was a while ago. And it really made me want to change the world in that sense, that I wanted to investigate and help that, because maybe I couldn't help my dad, who is quite older. I was the accident. I came very late in life. But because I saw that my dad could go that way, I wanted to change how things were for my dad as well. Didn't happen, but at least someone is doing that change. I'm working on other things. But that was a very important thing in defining what I wanted to study and getting me curious. But the second thing was when I moved to do my PhD. It's very similar to getting out of my comfort zone. But when I moved to do my PhD, I actually put a lot of effort into communicating. So not just talking and presenting, but in general, how I communicated. I was a very shy kid, always had a book with me at all times. There was a social event, I would be in a corner reading, regardless of location. I have a book with me today, yes, but now I don't use it anymore. Now it's kind of like, I know it's there if I need it, but it's not in what I do anymore. But the truth is that I put myself out there in the sense that I try to get this, fake it till you make it of, yeah, I'm going to pretend I actually know how to talk to people. And then I became a science communicator, which is the opposite of what I always thought I was going to do. I ended up doing stand-up comedy, which I never thought I would do, and now I do. So I think that was two very defining moments besides peaking at 9.
Awesome. I really relate to that. I was a really nervous kid as well, and I have just volunteered to do a panel today, so how times have changed. So Laura, you spoke about wiggly careers. Was there any specific point in your wiggly career that was pivotal to what you do?
Yeah, I don't know. It's quite hard to sort of pick any one time. I think maybe it's less defining points, but more maybe defining people who I kind of met along the way. So I was just thinking, I suppose, for me as a med student, like I had a friend who was a computing student who taught me how to build websites like early on, and then I really caught the bug for that. And then doing my cardiovascular BSc, I had this amazing German programmer, a supervisor who taught me how to program in MATLAB super early on, and then maybe later on for the startup, it was the first person who kind of put money into the business. So maybe it's more, I guess, the people that I met along the way. And I think that definitely would be some advice I'd put out there, would be just like going out and kind of talking to people. And I think I've been very fortunate in meeting them, but also you can kind of increase your net of luck, I think, a little bit just by kind of, I don't know, like events like this, which is amazing to like connect with new people. And I went through, when I was looking at kind of shifting out of medicine, just sort of cold emailing people on LinkedIn and being like, you look really cool. I think you've had a really cool career path. Like, I mean, no agenda. I just would love to hear like what your journey was. And actually, I found surprisingly most people kind of do actually say yes, and they say, yeah, I'll have a 15-minute Zoom coffee or something with you. And yeah, so I think probably more the people I met along the way. And then hopefully kind of we'll keep doing that wiggly thing all the way through.
Amazing advice. Yeah, don't underestimate people's want to talk about themselves. So if you want some advice, ask them to talk about themselves. That's how you do market research for your business as well. And last but definitely not least, Nicola, for your career, I weirdly have written down Python, which is not your entire career, but that was what I somehow wrote down as the important bit of your career. So
Python?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. That's funny because I only started using Python when I moved to Bristol a year and a half ago.
I've decided that's the pivotal of your career.
I didn't really speak about my career at all during my talk, which is probably a bit why, but I've taken some turns. So I was not coding at 9. I was going to marine science summer camps where we designed research projects and spent a week out in the field on little boats, studying things, writing papers, and making oral presentations, because that was how I spent my summers as a child. And then when I moved to university, I actually wanted to go for chemical engineering because I didn't think you could make money as an oceanographer, because I thought the only option was sort of to be a marine biologist and like go, train whales. And I didn't really see much of a future for that for me. So for me, there have sort of been a couple really key points, and one was a random break in my schedule, my second year of uni, where I needed a class, and I decided I looked and we had a chemical oceanography class. And I went, cool, sounds great. And I signed up for that class, and by the end of that quarter, I had switched my major from chemical engineering to environmental science. And very shortly after, I needed a summer job because I was a student and didn't have money. And so I reached out to my professors, and I was like, are any of you hiring for, research assistants? And there was a brand new professor starting, and he was a coder. He was an ocean modeler. And he was like, yeah, I've got some money, come work for me. And that was what ended up becoming that methane paper. And so it was really just, I needed a job, and he said, learn to code and work for me. And I said, great. Ended up doing more coding for my PhD, moving across the country. And then at the end of that, I was looking for postdocs, and my background is actually as a climate modeler. I'm working with these really big global simulations, doing future climate projections. And by the end of my PhD, I had some fellowships out that I was waiting to hear back from that would keep me in the same community that I had been in, working on this same model with the same people, just at a different location. And my advisor at Bristol, Fanny Montero, actually cold emailed me and was like, hi, I think you'd be a good fit for this project I'm hiring. And I was just like, I don't know who you are, lady, but let's talk about it. And I applied for this position, and then she offered it to me, and I didn't expect to have to make that kind of decision. Talked to my advisors, and they said, get out of your bubble. Go and move across the ocean to England and meet a new research community using different methods. And I think it has been an absolutely fantastic choice, especially given the current situation in the United States. Look out for weird opportunities that sort of pop up out of nowhere, I think has really been the key changing point for me.
So I feel like if anyone in the audience is sitting here wondering if they should get out of their comfort zone, we're being told by the universe that yes, you should. Obviously, I'm not liable for any actions that come off the back of that, but I'm just putting it out there. So I'm quite in awe of what all of you do. They all seem to be jobs that have massive positive impact on the world, and you should all be very proud of that. But is there anything in particular that you are particularly proud of that you've done or achieved? I want to give you a chance to shout about it and brag a little bit, open floor to brag. And Laura, I'm catching your eye, and as you're in health tech, I'm going to go with you first.
Yeah, it's a nice question. It's very positive. I like it. I guess for me, my favorite thing about it is always, the people that we help along the way. So it's so patient-facing, which is maybe a lesson from my sort of more clinical career. But I love the tech. I love building out all the AI stuff. But actually, my favorite thing is watching more user testimonial videos. And we do a lot of patient feedback in everything we do. And you obviously saw all the kind of academic clinical outcomes, and those numbers are so important. But actually, we capture all these great videos of people saying, what did you actually like about it? And people are saying, they made a kind of full sort of shift in how they were living before. They feel like this is something they can do again in future. They thought it was just going to be a 12-week program that they do and then go back to their old ways. And they're like, oh no, I actually I think I can keep this up. I feel like I've changed things, and maybe changed for their family as well, not just the individual. So yeah, I suppose that's maybe, if that answers your question.
You should be proud of that. I think that's a great response. Nicola, I'm going to go to you next and talk about things that you're proud of. I've got climate tech written down. Is that? No. just writing random notes.
Well, I've mentioned this methane paper a few times. Part of it is just because it is my most cited article. Even though I'm not the first author, my advisor is the first author, but it's my paper, and I am very proud of it. But that paper, which came out in 2018 or 2019, I forget, the whole idea was really to get a better estimate of this really uncertain term that, accounts for, how much methane is coming from the ocean, going to the atmosphere, etc. And that paper has been cited in the UN's IPCC reports, the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, where they really are sort of establishing what is the basis of knowledge that we have around global climate and the earth and environment. And so the number that we got as a part of that project has been cited in this report, and a lot of these global carbon budget reports as well, which is really cool to me. And that was really what we wanted out of it, was we were this number's so uncertain, we want to give a better estimate, and we just want to help close the gap here. And we managed to do that, and that feels like an awesome success. So
you should be very proud of that as well. I'm not going to try and tell you what I think you do. So, Bea, would you like to tell us your proudest moment?
I thought a lot about this question because I don't have a lot of the work that I've done has not been like very high general impact. But I think my favorite moment of a difference that I made was actually on a coding workshop that I taught. And there were 2 girls in this class of about 50 kids. And only 2 girls. And it was, I think, 6 weeks every Saturday. This girl was really shy. And she really didn't want to start, but she came along and she would talk to me. And at the end of the workshop, her mom came and hugged me, and the kid hugged me. And I was completely, I was just, helping her. But the mom came and told me that it was the first time her kid actually was happy to go do any schoolwork, because the kid used to, unfortunately, be bullied at school because she had a disability. And that was never even a question in my mind at any point. So when they hugged me, and I was so surprised by the thing that for me had such little impact, but for her, she was so excited and so happy that I think that was the coolest moment of my career, and I don't talk about it at all.
Well, I'm glad to give you an opportunity to talk about it. And I think it's important to remember that while you're all trying to change the world, it's also important to change the world for one person, and that can actually be the most impactful thing. And Penny.
Yeah, I think I'll stick to the sort of theme for International Women's Day today as well. And it was more just quite a funny moment. So when I finished my PhD, there was an opportunity within our team to take on a postdoc. And it was for NHS Wales within one of the local health boards, because they were setting up what they were calling sort of an improvement team, where basically part of that was going to be 4 mathematical modelers that were going to go in, sort of work across the organisation, identify projects, problems, build models, try and improve a variety of different services. So all the organisation had been told, and all the heads of this team had been told, is you've got 4 mathematical modelers coming to join your team. Obviously, they created their own biases on what these mathematical models were going to look like, what sort of background they were going to have. And basically, on day 1, these 4 girls, 4 young, we were 4 young women at the time, rocked up. We'd all shared this car, we got lost on our way, all of these things. We talked up, we were making so much noise and disruption, and sort of, they came out of this thing and they were like, what are you doing here? And we're like, we're your mathematical modelers. And you could just see this look of complete shock on their faces there. They just hadn't even imagined that this is what they would be getting from the university to, to work on these things. And I think over the sort of 2 years that we worked with them, we did so much in kind of changing people's mindsets, about, maths isn't scary, and the work, because there was a lot of sort of, people not wanting to adopt new techniques, not wanting to change services, not thinking that, they know best, when we can show them in a model that, they don't need 8 beds, they need 10, and all this sort of thing. And we did loads of work in just whole sort of changing mindsets. And we were like a bit, hope it's not blowing our trumpet, like a breath of fresh air, just a different view, into this organisation. And I think that did so much at the time to do that. Yeah, and I'm really proud of what we achieved. And I just felt like we did a lot to sort of say, okay, what you imagine people doing maths degrees look like, this is it,
I also did a maths degree, so I relate to that greatly. Awesome. So I think you should all be very proud of yourselves, and I'm glad you got to share those stories with us. I'm now going to talk about, I think you all kind of mentioned this in your talks, but you all kind of work at the intersection of AI and something. So like AI, there's people that just do AI research, build AI models, but these are all the intersection of AI and data and something else. And I was wondering, so particularly, I have health and climate written down because that is the event, but how is AI being used in your fields currently, and do you see this evolving in any particular way? And Nicola, I'm going to ask you to go first.
Yeah, so during my talk, I only talked about one really small sliver of how machine learning is being used in oceanography or climate science as a whole. And there's really a lot that's been happening recently in terms of advancing that field. It has been super exciting. And so just last year, actually there's an annual conference, but last year was held at the Turing Institute in London. There was this climate informatics conference that was all about, using these data science heavy methods, AI, machine learning, and applying them to climate contexts. And it was, atmospheric physicists, it was chemists, it was oceanographers, and it was such a really cool blend of people that were all just interested in these new novel techniques. And there's so many interesting ways. One of the biggest things that I think about is just, coming from my Earth system modeling background, is these big climate models, these global climate models that we're using to predict, climate out to 2100 or even further. They were really slow. And so, there's talks of using machine learning-based emulators to sort of speed up these processes, to reduce computational time, improve efficiency, reduce the amount of resources that are needed to make these types of global predictions. I think there's really a lot of opportunity there for that. There's so many things. And even small scale sort of practical applications, thinking about water quality management. In the sort of machine learning AI side of things, we talk a lot about like digital shadows and digital twins. And the idea of a digital twin is you have, for example, I like to think of it as a fish tank. You have a fish tank, you have a bunch of monitors in the fish tank, and they're measuring all of the things that are happening, the chemicals and the temperature and all that. And then you have a computer model that is modeling the fish tank. And something in the fish tank might change, like maybe the nutrients are just suddenly drop to zero, and your model will also, the nutrients will drop to zero, but then the computer will then feed back to the fish tank and tell it, let's input some nutrients and sort of reestablish the ecosystem. And so that's the digital twin idea, is that there's this computer to real scenario feedback. And I still have no idea where this is going to go in terms of actual practical application, but people love talking about it. And I love listening to them talk about it. So.
Yeah, I'm very intrigued. That sounds very cool, actually. I've never really understood what people meant by digital twins before, so very well explained.
I like the fish tank metaphor. Yeah. That's the easiest way for me to think about it.
Awesome. Thank you for that. And Laura, I know you sort of touched on this in your talk a little bit, but is there anything in particular you wanted to add about how it's evolving and where you see it going?
Yeah, there's a lot. I think maybe trying to sum up all the ways it's being used in climate is actually quite hard in a very short snippet, I suppose. As I touched on, I guess, maybe if I bucket it actually more from the sort of primary care through to secondary care through to tertiary care. So primary care, I think we spoke about quite a bit in terms of the automation piece and automating admin, and we all know the pain of trying to get a GP appointment first thing in the morning when the lines open. There's better ways to do these, and you can do a lot of resource allocation and sort of, I suppose, the boring stuff like appointment booking, but actually that's critical, right? That's what a lot of things run on. So there's a lot of interesting things around how we can automate that. I've got so part of the NHS clinical on-chair program. There's just so many great companies that I suddenly really want to shout out. But there's a company called Deep Medical that do a lot around waiting lists, and applying AI to this gigantic list of people who are waiting for any sort of elective procedures, and how you can better triage that by the ones who need to be seen more quickly or who can go elsewhere, and how can we support people to wait better. They also did a lot on identifying people who are likely to not attend appointments and maybe why. So maybe they have transport issues or it's certain demographics, and I suppose AI used to detect where we need to target more care. Also really excited about how it's being used for health inequalities. So I think as we sort of start to introduce these technologies, not leaving certain groups behind, and there's a lot of work going on about how you can identify people who maybe need more care, need more resource, and target that better. Image analysis, I think we sort of touched on briefly, is a crazy exciting space. So we've now got models that can pick up things that even us as humans haven't seen or detected, which I think is really exciting in terms of disease prediction and progression. Yeah, that's a few. There's 101 things. I'm just trying to think. But I think it's both patient-facing and then also AI admin automation, and then all the other things around using your data and image analysis a lot better.
Awesome. So lots to be excited about. And Penny, you come at this from a different point of view. You're coming at it from the AI literacy point of view. Is there anything you see that's going on in the field that you're excited by or you want to share?
So maybe a little bit different. I think it's the boring stuff for us, which can really add value. I say that, it's the mundane, the doing. I mentioned we've got people dealing with sort of, gathering a whole lot of sort of information, reports, collation of, there's spreadsheets everywhere, it's all of this sort of stuff in terms of how can we make people's lives easier and improve the efficiency of what they do. So they have time to actually do the fun stuff and actually time to do their job. And hopefully that will help us improve the sort of satisfaction of doing that. But, for me, what we're trying to do right now is culture. And that's probably a big part of how do you change the culture in an organisation, or how do you change people's ideas around sort of tools and AI, especially AI in particular. I think I briefly mentioned there's a lot of uncertainty, there's a lot of worry, and there's a lot of sort of risk that people see when you talk about these tools. And I think we've got the biggest piece for us is going to be about creating an organisational culture where people know what they can do, how they can use it, how it's a value to them, but how they can do it safely to ensure that we're still, like within a healthcare sector, you're protecting the people that you're there to protect. And I think in a public-facing organisation, that's the key. Sorry, that went off on a tangent.
No, that's super awesome. I was going to say, at Top by Humans, we call it AI and data confidence, because even if you have the skills and knowledge, you still need the confidence to be able to apply it in your job. So I'm going to move on in the interest of time, because I have a few more questions and we want to leave some time for our audience. So Bea, I'm going to address this one to you. So we hear a lot about issues around diversity and AI, data and technology in general. So things like biased data sets, or technology not working for certain people, like facial recognition not working if you're not white, and things like that. And one of the reasons that this happens is because there's a lack of diversity. There's a lack of diversity going into these fields. There's a lack of diversity in designs. Data sets are never completely unbiased and things like that. So I'd love to hear some tips for how we actually start to address this lack of diversity. So you're helping one young girl get into coding, feels like a great step. But do you have any other tips that you'd like to share on how we address this diversity?
So I think, first of all, the fact that we are talking about it is already a step towards at least addressing it. Because if we have this big elephant and we just pretend it's not there, then it's just going to propagate and make it worse for everyone. The problem, just even bringing this up with the people that can make something about it, or the collection of the data, or what data we use, makes a big difference. In terms of careers, I feel, and please take this the nicest way possible, if you're applying for a job, you need to, channel the confidence of a tech bro. Believe me, because we hear a lot that women don't have confidence, so just channel a tech bro. They will apply to anything. They will apply to anything that has remotely the same synonyms of whatever you're trying to do, and they apply for it. And it's a numbers game, because they apply so much, they will actually get it. So I think for anyone trying to get a career, just channel a tech bro, only in that sense, nothing else. Don't go around harassing people. But just, you have your CV, you prepare it, you channel your tech bro, you send it to anything, even if you think it's impossible, because you never know what they also didn't get. They don't think they're going to get all the jobs, but at least some of them. So just apply, and that's halfway.
That's so funny. For my business, I always say I'm channeling my inner Adam Newman, the CEO of WeWork, if you've watched that show, because he was like, we're worth $40 billion for absolutely no reason. My Irish insecurities will bring me back down to earth somewhere, and I'll probably land nicely in the middle with the level of confidence I should have. I like that advice. Awesome. Penny, I'm going to come back to you now for this one.
So I think in terms of it's about raising that awareness. So you mentioned earlier about networks, and getting out into these groups, these networks, meeting people, talking to people, and sort of showcasing opportunities, careers, and the diversity within them, and the opportunity to move and to change and to do is all part of this. If we're not having this filter through, we can still filter across. That's a terrible analogy, but in terms of people moving and coming in and just creating that. And for me, networks, and in particular mentorship has been a massive part of that for me. I've had some excellent mentors that have helped me, and role models, and being able to see those. In my case, they have actually been strong female role models, but that's not necessarily always the case. But to try and showcase those opportunities and paths and work for you, and just yeah, I found myself in the right place at the right time. But again, I think there's a part of putting yourself in that pool as well. Yeah?
Yeah, and I think people that get awesome opportunities probably get rejected from more stuff because they apply for so many things and they just learn to take the rejections. It stings, but take it on the chin a little bit. But yeah, you can't get it if you don't apply. Laura, I'm going to come to you next.
Yeah, I think we've probably covered quite a lot of it, I think, as we said. I love the point around channeling your inner tech bro, but I think there is a study, and I'll probably misquote the numbers, but there was something around, you mean, on average, men tend to apply for jobs when they've got around like 60% of the requirements that are like listed on any sort of job posting, whereas for women, is it 40?
Yeah.
Whereas women want like 90% plus for that, and it's, you mean, and again, like I say, a lot of it comes down to a numbers game, so I think it's easy to say, like, don't let the imposter syndrome get to you, and I feel like people have said that to me so many times, but it is just so important, you mean, to, like, put yourself out there and not, I mean, I feel like no one really knows what they're doing in any spaces ever, and everyone's kind of just figuring it out, so I think once you sort of change your mindset for that, just kind of go for things, and yeah, nothing to lose.
I think, yeah. The way that I got the job that I have now was at a small sort of networking-based conference. It was just people who do ocean biogeochemistry, and I was on the postdoc market, and I wanted a job, and I went to the organizers, and I was like, hey, can we make like an Excel sheet where people who are hiring can put their info down, and people who want to be hired can put their info down? And they were like, yeah, sure. And a year later, I randomly got a cold email from someone. And so, you know, advocating for things like that, like it just like, I feel like that really highlights like the network component of, you know, these organizers of this conference had a bigger network than I did of people I had never met. But also we were, you know, putting together this spreadsheet that then has helped other people also find positions like post PhD, which I think is super cool. And it also is how I ended up working with the first woman of my career. I had always worked for men for every other position prior. They were all lovely, thank God. All of my lab mates were also all women, so there's an upcoming workforce. We'll be there in a few years. But yeah, I'm really grateful for that Excel sheet, and I hope other people are too. So sometimes there's little small things you can do.
It's like postdoc Tinder.
Yeah.
There's a business idea. Yeah.
Great. I'm going to leave you two to channel your inner Adam Newman and start your business. So I would like to go back to positivity. So whenever we think about climate and health and things going on in the world, the news does sometimes seem a bit doom and gloom. So the AI is using too much carbon, too much water. There's lots of things going on in health AI that people maybe don't agree with. And I wanted to know, in your field, so not necessarily what you're doing, is there one advancement or collaboration that particularly excites you? So I can go first. So I think you kind of touched on this actually, Laura. So an AI model is now able to detect breast cancer 5 years earlier than doctors. And previously, when this happened, the false positive rate, so whenever it was saying people had breast cancer when they didn't, was actually always really high, whereas this time it was basically zero. So it was able to see something, and it was what you said. So the human doctors still aren't quite able to see whatever it's seeing in these images, but it is able to detect breast cancer 5 years earlier, and if we build trust in this model, this could actually end up saving a lot of lives. Nicola, I'm going to pick on you because you spoke last.
Climate is something that a lot of people can feel really doom and gloom about. I know this. I experience it every day. But one of the things that has made me feel a little better, when I often get asked, like as a climate scientist, people come up to me and they're like, is the Earth screwed? And what I say to them is, the Earth will still be here, which maybe isn't the answer you want to hear. But some of the work that came out of my PhD, I was using these climate models, and I was looking at nutrient usage by these phytoplankton and the strength of this biological pump that I mentioned. And the outcome of the work that we're still working on getting published was basically that when you improve the realism of how these ecosystems are represented in climate models, the strength of the biological pump, which has been modeled in like global model scenarios, a lot of times it seems like the strength of it is going to decrease, which is not great. That means, you know, more carbon staying in the atmosphere instead of being stored in the deep ocean. but we've found that with more realistic ecosystems, it actually looks remarkably stable. And so if there's, if temperatures are changing, if nutrients are becoming more scarce, the phytoplankton with this realism are able to really adapt to their changing ecosystems and maintain their productivity. And that is really exciting for me. I have so much faith in these little guys.
I love watching people get excited about what they do. Penny, I'm going to move over to you next.
Ooh, well, I think I'm going to just relay back to some of the work I did when in the international development team within the ONS, and I'll see Alison giggle now because she's not going to know what example I'm going to give, but everyone always talks about our counting cows from space, which is basically just that. So a series of different image recognition projects looking at sort of, in this case, basically just counting cows from space in terms of trying to understand the movement, the diversity, but also actually the populations of cattle in a lot of areas, which is actually really hard to do. In particular, this was within sort of African sort of countries as a sign of kind of GDP and the change in GDP and the effect, but obviously has a massive kind of climate impact alongside that and looking at how this is changing. But again, that was applied then to a number of different scenarios, and there was another really good one around tree growth in Uganda where they've had this campaign to kind of replant so much of forestry, and they were using image recognition over time to understand how successful those campaigns had been and new target areas and work. So there's so much opportunity here to do some really good things. Yeah.
Amazing. Those are both really interesting applications of data. Laura, I'm going to come over to you now.
Yeah, I'm trying to think through because there's so many really cool examples. I think one that's come up more recently is a great company called Skin Analytics, and they've basically got the first medical device fully regulated for taking photographs of lesions on the skin and then detecting risk of skin cancer. And I think there's been tons of academic work on this, but this is the first actual, it's met the bar, it can be commercially deployed as a genuine medical device tool that can be used to detect essentially the percentage chance that any given lesion is likely to be cancerous or not. And I think they're a really cool company because they spent so long doing all their due diligence and all the regulatory part, all the evidence generation, and it's finally kind of come through for them, which I'm really pleased about. But also just in terms of where they're applying it. So it's just widening access to, the care that people should get. So we don't have enough dermatologists basically at the moment. So the wait, if you've got a suspicious looking lump, is just far too long. It should be a 2-week wait for skin cancer, but at the moment, the numbers are just so off. The waiting list is spiraling. So they've worked really closely with the NHS on how they can restructure the pathway. So you've got a suspicious looking lump. Immediately, we can send you to one of these centres and you can get a photo taken, or even within the practice itself, get it sent off, and then you're getting a percentage likelihood, and then that's then used to triage. So the people who really need to be seen really quickly are seen much faster, and it's just sort of changing up, I think, in a new way, maybe how these processes and services should run. So it's cool, and I think it's going to be coming out, and hopefully more and more people will see it coming through now, because it's a hard bar, I think, to get a better tech actually into the NHS and actually being used, and rightfully so. There's a high sort of regulatory evidence bar, but also there's just all these other barriers of just culture and inefficiency and lack of process and systems. So I think they've really cracked it. So I'm really excited for that.
As a very pale person with lots of moles, that sounds awesome.
They also have done a lot of work on health inequalities as well, again, just as a company. So modelling all different skin types and stuff as well.
Very cool.
Amazing. That is, yes, definitely something to be excited about. In the interest of time, I'm slowly looking at Penny's watch here. I'm going to move on to our last question, so we've got some time for audience questions. And what I really wanted to do is leave our audience with something actionable that they can think about. So what I want to talk about is one sentence on opportunities to get more involved in data science, whether it's in data science in anything, AI, health tech, climate tech, any of those things. And Bea, I'm going to come to you first.
So opportunities that you can do right now. I think a really cool way to start, I'm just going to, the expression in Portuguese is I'm going to pull some fire to my sardine. But I'm going to talk to you about so Turing organizes these hackathons called data study groups. And they happen for 2 weeks at a time, where they get people with all these backgrounds, not necessarily data science backgrounds, but they shove them into a room in trying to solve a problem with real data from real problems that exist. The plankton project that I talked about was a hackathon like this. So I had no experience in plankton whatsoever. So cool. Learned so much about it. There's so many of them. But the idea is that we got this 2-week intense, and I think it's great for you to get your hands on a project that actually can have real world impact in a very quick way, and also learning from all of these people that will be there with different expertises.
Amazing. Penny?
Oh gosh, it's hard to like name one thing. Sorry, this is one sentence.
One.
Join a network. Just join. Just start something new. Do some course. Do something. Just leave today with one action, whatever that will be.
Come and join our SWADE, Southwest Women in AI and Data. Awesome. So Anna in the audience is a member, and so is Laura, and so am I. So come and grab any of us if you want to join. That's a nice plug for me. And over to Laura.
That was going to be my one.
Oh, sorry.
Southwest Women in AI and Data. But yeah, I think maybe just seconding Penny's one of like, you know, there's a lot of networks out there, and a lot of this is just sort of learning what other people are doing and like what the paths are. So yeah, kind of reach out. Don't be scared of reaching out to ask people what their journey was and if they have any advice.
That's been your big tip of today. Just hassle people on LinkedIn. You're going to end up getting complaints about all the emails being sent on your behalf. And Nicola, over to you.
I feel like I had an idea for this initially, and it's just escaped my mind.
I wrote open source down from your talk, so I don't, yeah, I don't know, like you do lots of open source stuff.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that's actually, okay, yeah, sure. One of the big things when we're talking about like data science and AI development, so much of it is being done by like private companies these days, but I think there's really a big place for the idea of open source software, but also like open data. Especially as someone who relies on a lot of that data. But I can't remember the specifics. I learned about it at that climate informatics meeting. I don't remember if it's a Turing thing. I'll talk about it for one. So there's a journal called the Journal of Open Source Software, called JOSS. And they basically accept submissions of people who are making software. And they will go and like peer review your software, and they will go to your GitHub repository, and they will make sure everything is like reproducible. And so there's like been a really big push in like data science for like, and science as a whole, there's a big reproducibility problem. And I love seeing this, you know, open source journal taking like a big step towards like making sure that things are reproducible. And so I highly recommend going on there, because you can also just like find software that might be applicable to what you do. There's stuff that's like so incredibly niche. I mean, like our project, we're going to be submitting to that soon, just so that way it's easier for people to find, and it has this reproducible thumbs up on it.
On one sentence.
Yeah, JOSS.
Thank you. Do you have something to add?
Because I am an editor for JOSS.
Yeah!
And I was going to say that if you want to actually get editing experience, because everything is open source, they do calls once or twice a year as well. So not just to submit your papers, but if you do want to get some experience of being on the other side without, you know, giving your free time to a predatory journal, you can just try to apply for that, because there's always looking for more editors. Sorry.
No, awesome. Thank you all for your contributions. I'm just going to say my advice would be get hands-on. So there's lots of data out there. So this morning, JGI ran a Python visualization workshop, and we used some stuff off World Bank, which is an excellent repository of open source data that you can download. You can do some cool modeling of stuff that actually has real-world impact. We were doing female unemployment across the years, across different countries. Can make some cool visualizations about that. But yes, thank you very much. And before we go to questions, I do just want to give our panelists a massive round of applause. They've been amazing. Okay, so catch your breath for like 1 second, and then audience, go with questions. Oh. I'll read them out.
I'll be blind now.
For the panel. Oh, that's a great question. So, what social media sites have you found particularly useful for networking?
I mean, I can take a bash on, I definitely use LinkedIn the most, and I don't really love it. I feel like it's a bit of a necessary evil, because it's definitely a bit of a, you know, people only post the good stuff, right? So I do think I find that is at least in the health tech space, I find that's usually the easiest way to find people and connect with people, but use it cautiously, because I think spiraling on LinkedIn and scrolling through everyone's successes is not always the best thing for headspace. So that's the one I found. Twitter used to be a lot better, but it's sort of, I don't use it as much. Yeah, maybe when it was Twitter. So that's probably,
Yeah, everyone else using LinkedIn? Sort of.
I used to be a Twitter person back when it was Twitter. And which used to be great at conferences to see, who else is around, who can you set up meetings with, and things like that. I keep saying I'll make the transfer to, the Twitter is fully deactivated now, but I keep saying I'll switch to Bluesky. I haven't. If anyone has recommendations, I'm on LinkedIn, but if anyone actually has active recommendations, I am also open to them, so.
I think WhatsApp groups are coming through a bit. I mean, Southwest Women AI and Data has a WhatsApp community. It's not quite social media, but sometimes that's quite a helpful source of things.
Yeah, actually, I'm in a lot of different WhatsApp groups, or they're called WhatsApp communities, for different things, and you're actually a really great way to meet people. There's quite a few in Bristol for different networking groups. That seems to be coming up as the popular one at the minute. I'm looking at the questions. Are we going to ask specific questions to specific people, or just panel questions? Yes, both. Okay. Laura, there's a question for you on the board.
It's a good question.
Okay. Do you want to...
Oh, wait, sorry.
It's at the top. So it is a question about, so patients say they have a lack of regular contact with their doctors. So is the AI tool cheapening healthcare, or is it allowing underfunding? Oh, it's quite a topical question.
It's a good one, and I'd love to meet up and keep chatting about that, because it's kind of hard. I've got a lot of thoughts on it. But yeah, no, it's a really good point. We've got to be really, really careful that we're not replacing actual clinical care that people actually need. So there's a real balance, right, on widening accessibility through some of these tools, but realistically, if someone needs proper clinical care, that should be absolutely what they get. So I think it's all about how it's implemented, who it's implemented by, and I suppose where the incentives are by the people doing them. So I mean, we personally try and stay really outcomes focused, and I think that's when these sort of things prove out. If it's just a cheap tool that's just ticking a box, that's just being rolled out, that isn't really connecting with people, isn't really helping or doing any good, then I suppose that will get proven out in the outcomes. There's also the piece around preserving humans to do what humans need to do best. So again, keeping the focus on how can AI speed up and augment the clinician rather than actually replacing kind of the important things. But yeah, I'm just thinking on the spot, because it's a really good point, and it's definitely a hot area of contention in terms of bringing AI into healthcare. And also the underfunding cutbacks piece, you mean money that we're saving in certain ways, say by doing automation AI, we should be putting back in the system to support things, but it doesn't necessarily always happen like that.
Awesome. It feels like you could talk about this. This feels like quite a passion point for you, and you could talk about
to dig deeper on it, but I'm going to pause and not. But
Nicola, I don't know how to say this.
The cordyceps jury theorem.
Lovely. Does it require voters are independent, and if you train multiple models on the same data, won't the predictions be highly correlated? Do you have any thoughts on this?
Yeah. So I believe, and someone can fully correct me if I'm wrong, the idea behind the cordyceps jury theorem is for actual juries. And so have I read into the specifics? No, but I'm going to talk off the top of my head and say that theoretically all of your voters would be given the same information. And when we're talking about our model, because I feel like the real question here is about the uncertainty of the model and how that's being derived. So we have two different ways that we're looking at model uncertainty. One way that I'm doing it is through the actual data that's being provided. So with field observations and laboratory observations, you have some amount of standard deviation, standard error of measurement that is being provided with these measurements. And so one of the things that I'm doing is, it's not quite bootstrapping, but we called it that, and then someone said call it resampling, which is fine, where basically I'm creating a matrix of multiple different versions of the same data set where I'm resampling within the standard error distribution to create, we have all these observations, these data points. These actual values could be somewhere in this range. And so I'm going to do it 50 times, basically, and then run all of those through the model. And then, you can get sort of a mean estimate from that. You can get 95th percentile, confidence interval, you can get median, etc. That's how the way I'm looking at the measurement error. And then for the actual machine learning side of things, the way that we're looking at it is each model is broken down into 10 separate crossfolds, and each crossfold breaks it down to like a 90-10 split of data versus of training data versus testing data. So it's seeing 90% and then testing against 10%, and then it repeats that, and it shifts the 10% along each time. And I have a good visualization, but I didn't put it in there. And so theoretically, that should address the independence question, because each different submodel is seeing different portions of data. And so that is then giving us some sort of uncertainty there. But then the rest of the model uncertainty is based on taking each model and looking at the trees and the crossfolds within the trees, and that is the part that I did not develop. And so I would push that question onto my collaborators who are not here.
That is an excellent, be a politician someday. That's a great politician's answer. I feel like the one at the top we've answered in the responses about how to get into new projects. We've said network, take a leap of faith, all of that. Penny, one on Ofgem and the civil services problem, just understanding the data better, or do you think they need to understand the data they have better, or do they need better data pipelines, and how much is using machine learning or AI? I'm going to go with most of it's data cleaning, but that's just my outsider's opinion.
So step one for me actually is data quality. So actually, before we want to start talking more and more around all of these new models that we can bring in and what we can do with this, we don't yet have the data quality, because I don't think people have the sort of understanding, for better want of a word, of why their part in that process and their part in ensuring the quality of their data is accurate is important, because they don't yet know the journey that data is going to take on. So this is about empowering people from even that very first stage of data collection on why it's so important that they input this data correctly, why they, record this and report this in a certain way, because if not, further down the line, this is going to be the impact. So I would think that it's first of all understanding the data quality, and then it's about the power of what we can do with that and what we can get out of that data.
And that is true of any data project. So all data projects need to have good quality. It's my favorite saying, garbage in, garbage out. I once said that in front of a room full of Germans who had been deadpan the entire session, and they found that sentence the funniest thing I've ever said. Like, they laughed for 5 minutes straight, and I was like, okay, cool. I'm glad I'm entertaining. So I think this is geared at Laura about health tech, but can probably be answered more generally. So it's about whether there's a risk that products using AI and technology will only be accessible to those that can afford them, rather than helping those in need.
Yeah, so no, 100%, absolutely, it's a huge, huge risk. And I think also a lot of the time, those who can afford it are also not necessarily the ones who need it. And people can pay out of pocket for these things. Actually, it's people who can't that actually need, especially in terms of prevention. So there's a really interesting thing at the moment with the longevity space, and there's these Neco clinics. People might have seen them Marylebone in London, founded by the chap who founded Spotify. And these big fancy clinics, they MRI scan you, and they cost thousands of pounds. So no, yeah, definite huge risk in terms of only those who can afford it being able to access. So what we're doing at Avid is very much, we think this should be something that the system pays for. So actually this isn't something that prevention people shouldn't pay out of pocket with their own cash, but actually this is system-wide change. So actually our model isn't going, not to go too commercial, but going direct to consumer, but actually up at the sort of NHS commissioning level and saying, these are prevention programs that everyone should have access to. And arguably the people who don't usually engage in these things, who definitely won't pay for them, are actually the ones who are probably at highest risk, and actually by reaching out and impacting them, your population healthcare modelling will ultimately improve. So definitely. Also, technology being more about profit than helping those in need. I think that's about sort of setting up what the incentives are, and there's a very complex relationship, I think, between the NHS and private companies and working together, and probably, again, not enough time to dig into in a short answer, but I think it's recognising there is benefit in working with some of these third-party companies. The NHS can't do it all itself. I think it is going to need to work and outsource in places, but obviously you have to be very, very careful about that, because you don't want to be driven by profit rather than outcome.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting, and we see it across like pretty much all technology as it's rolled out. It's like in the education space, we had these massive online open courses, which were free to start off with. Now they're really expensive. It's going to be the same with AI tutors. They're rolling them out for free at the minute. I saw a great quote that said, we need to make sure AI works for the 8 billion, not the 8 billionaires, and that's really stuck in my head about what we need to be thinking about when we're planning. Do we have time for one more question? This is addressed at Penny, but I think everyone can kind of chip in on this if they want to. So what's the biggest challenge when you're implementing AI?
Oh.
Big questions coming from the audience.
Wish I'd have seen that earlier. Okay, I think I'll just come back to then that mindset and that risk and that uncertainty, and it's about changing the culture. So it's just empowering people to have the confidence to use these tools, to know when to use them, when it's right to use them, when knowing that they don't have to always use them, that AI isn't going to be the solution to everything, but in telling people, I think I saw a really good quote the other day that comes out of there's an AI in government action plan. I don't know if anyone's read it, but it's actually quite an interesting paper. Yeah. And there's a quote in there, I don't normally say that, there's a quote in there that says something around, you know, AI is about helping people to do their jobs like more effectively rather than replacing what they do. So, you know, to get that message across that it's about empowering you, to give you, you know, more opportunity within your job and your role, I think.
I think that's an excellent note to end on, unless anyone has anything they're dying to say.
No, mine was really negative.
Okay. We can save that one for later. But yes, thank you so much. This has been an excellent panel, and thank you for your wonderful questions. And just let's give you a round of applause again.
Wow, thank you all very much. That was amazing. Let's have a minute.